My mistress is pregnant, so I'm going to remarry. Please divorce me. I was completely expressionless at my husband's words. My husband was apologizing to me. What is he thinking? He's at an age where retirement is on the horizon. What's going on in his mind? I don't particularly mind divorcing. Our son, Michael, is independent and I have my own savings. But I just can't stand the thought of everything going his way. I have my pride too. The pride of someone who has kept the home for 30 years as a wife. Just watch, husband, I'll show you how serious I am. My name is Marcia, 53 years old. I've been working at a mid-sized company ever since I graduated from college. I took a few years off when Michael was born after marrying my husband, Nick, but aside from those few years, I've been working all my life. My husband is meek and not good at asserting himself, which is why he never climbed the corporate ladder. I, on the other hand, have become a manager, someone my colleagues rely on. Of course, there were those who envied my success. She's so bossy for a woman. She's been with the company so long, and thinks she owns the place. Really? I hear these words during breaks. I drink coffee without showing any reaction. At first, I was shocked. But I've gotten used to it. I haven't done anything wrong. That's why my subordinates believe in me and follow my lead. Instead of gossiping, they should be working harder. It was as I finished my coffee that I heard it. My wife's bossy at home too. My son's on her side, and I'm left out in the cold. That's tough. Recognizing the voice, I looked towards its source. From behind a potted plant's shadow, I saw. In the midst of a group speaking ill of me was my husband. And listening closely, it seemed like he was at the center of the trash talking. I always feel uncomfortable being compared to my wife. I'd hate to be compared to that thick-skinned person too. I might have married the wrong person. Who knew she would be like that? Sympathetic sighs rose from the group as my husband sighed. I was clutching my chest. There was no way I wouldn't be upset. My husband used to be a man of weak will. He joined the company a year after me and was sort of thrust upon me to look after, and as I taught him the ropes, we became close. Back then, he used to say he was envious of my abilities. Once we started dating, he would smile proudly about my competence. Not anymore, it seems. Now he resented my success and spread rumors about me. Since then, I started observing my husband's behavior at work more closely. He was always someone who preferred to avoid making waves. I wonder how he is at home. Hey, Marcia. I'm thirsty. All right. My husband won't walk to the fridge himself. He'd rather have me fetch him a beer. I can't remember him ever helping with the chores. At home, he's more overbearing than other husbands. Maybe, he's just more of a homebody than most. Could you rub my shoulders? I'm tired. Yeah. I'm tired too, and he's been more dedicated to spreading gossip about me than his work. But he seems to get tired all the same. How about some snacks? Didn't you just ask for a shoulder rub? What do you think I am capable of in 2 places at once? It'd be unbearable if there were more of you. He frowned. I was at a loss, but went to fetch some snacks anyway. If only he'd get them himself. In reality, he orders me around for everything. When I set out the snacks on the table, he prompts me to massage his shoulders again. I sighed deeply. My husband is not my ally. I'm reminded of that from time to time. Even when we go shopping on weekends, he hesitates in front of the produce section. He doesn't cook but stops at the sight of any sale sign. Which cabbage should we get? Well, the one you're holding in your right hand looks fresher. When I throw him a lifeline, he nods but rarely follows through with my advice. Let's look up how to pick a fresh cabbage on my smartphone. Really? Then what was my opinion for? He accepts information from his smartphone readily. Rather, he's always messing with it whenever he has a moment. Susan sure is funny. He often laughs out loud looking at his screen. Susan, the newbie? Yeah, the one I've been teaching. Got pretty attached to me. He boasts proudly. Sure enough, Susan frequently asks him for advice at work. Susan is a new employee and not very skilled. In a way, she resembles my husband in his younger days. You've become a mentor, I see. Well, I'm not as capable as you, but I've been at the company for a long time. I'm trying my best, and that's why Susan comes to me. My husband goes on a rant, his face turning red. I'm left speechless. He seems to take my words as criticism, although I had no intention of hurting him. Sorry. Maybe I was a bit harsh. Your words always sting. Seemingly emboldened by alcohol, he becomes bitterly verbose. Susan's kind, you know. She appreciates and encourages me more than anyone. Quite unlike you. You seem quite fond of Susan. I married the wrong person. He suddenly raised his voice. It was so loud it seemed to fill the room. I should have married Susan. That would have saved me from this misery. Susan's quite young, isn't she? My husband is already 55, nearing retirement age. Even if he were single, it's unlikely Susan would see him in a romantic light. That's what I thought. But then, my mistress is pregnant, so I'm gonna remarry. Please give me a divorce. I was stunned by his words. My husband was apologizing to me. The words mistress and the image of my timid husband oddly clashed in my mind. I was confused, but gradually the stark reality began to sink in. Who? It's Susan. We became close after she confided in me. Susan's pregnant? Yes. My husband nodded. I just shook my head in disbelief. Please, I don't want Susan to think of me as an irresponsible man. You're plenty irresponsible to me, though. You're capable at work, and you could always go to Michael's place. But Susan only has me. My husband pleaded. I pondered for a moment. I didn't particularly mind divorcing. But I didn't like the idea of everything going his way. After being smeared by my husband, my reputation at work had taken a hit. Aside from my immediate team, it seems most people enjoyed spreading rumors about me. Now, I would be labeled as the middle-aged woman who was dumped by her husband for a younger employee. That was unbearable. I had made up my mind. After a deep sigh, I said, "All right, goodbye then. Marcia! But let me make one thing clear. You'll probably be fired from the company." What? He cried out in astonishment. You're trying to scare me into staying married? That's not it. I won't do anything, I swear. But I can see it happening. That's a lie. You just don't want to divorce me. But it's too late. Marrying you was a mistake. I need someone who's kind and supportive, like Susan. He said it almost like a moan. When I signed the prepared divorce papers, my now ex-husband told me to pack my things. You're kicking me out? Yes. From today, this house will belong to Susan and me. There's no place for you here. I paid for most of the house. But I had no choice. I gathered my belongings and headed for the door. There was no one to see me off. I was alone on the night streets, wondering what to do next. For the time being, I moved to the park. Sitting on a swing, I killed time before calling my son, Michael. Michael was at a loss for words for a while. What's Dad thinking? Divorcing now, of all times? It's okay. We weren't that close as a couple anyway. Could you come pick me up? I have nowhere to stay. Understood. I'll be right there. The call ended. True to his word, Michael arrived soon after. He emerged from his black car. Michael somewhat resembled his father in looks. But their personalities were completely opposite. Michael invited me into the passenger seat. While driving to his house, he still had a grim look on his face. Dad's really selfish. I'm so disappointed to say he's my father. Don't say that, I said with a wry smile. My patience for my ex-husband had worn thin. But it was a marriage born out of love at one point. Reflecting on the memories of our youth, it was complicated to hear him spoken of so harshly. The next day, when I went to work, my ex-husband wasn't there. Nor was Susan to be seen. Just as I thought. I shrugged my shoulders. After finishing work and heading home, someone called out to me. It was my ex-husband. Marcia, what have you done? But I haven't done anything. I was fed up. My ex-husband seemed to be convinced that I had orchestrated some scheme. But that's a complete misunderstanding. Suddenly I'm fired. That doesn't make sense. I've dedicated myself to this company for years. I've been working hard for this company too, you know. That's something everyone who works here would think, not just something for my ex-husband to be proud of. It's not just me. Susan's been let go too. My brother must have done it. Brother! My ex-husband's eyes widened. They must have met several times before, but he seemed oblivious. I crossed my arms and said, "My brother is the president of this company. The predecessor was our father." "What?" He staggered. I watched silently, as surprise and fear appeared on his face. "You're part of the president's family?" "Yes. But I wanted to be a normal housewife, so I kept quiet about it. I didn't want to be fussed over just because I'm part of the president's family. I wanted to succeed on my own merit. As a result, I ended up being both admired and the subject of constant gossip. Yet the source of that gossip, my ex-husband, said with a trembling voice. "But you've climbed the ladder." "On my own strength. And if I had used my family's influence, you could have advanced too." He seemed at a loss for words. My brother is a strict man and he had always assessed my ex-husband, his brother-in-law, based on his actual abilities. And he had said, more than once, that if it weren't for the family connection, he'd have wanted to get rid of someone as useless as my ex-husband. And now, it seems that has become a reality. "I warned you, didn't I? If we divorced, you'd be out of a job." "But still, to think. The president is my wife's brother, that's just absurd." "Ex-wife, that is." I corrected him and started walking away. But my ex-husband followed persistently. "Can't you talk to your brother for me? Susan and I are out of jobs, and at this rate." "That's not possible." I kept walking without stopping. "I've made a promise not to interfere with the company's management." "But can't you just—" "No." "Why don't you talk to my brother directly?" "There's no way I could do that." He looked scared, his gaze darting away as he left. A week has passed since then. For now, I'm staying at Michael's place, but I plan to find an apartment and live on my own soon. "You know you're welcome to stay here, Mom." "That won't do. It wouldn't be fair to your wife." I shook my head. Michael is married, and his wife has just had a baby. I can't impose on them for long. Right after I left Michael's house, my smartphone rang. It was my ex-husband. Again. I frowned. It had been like this all morning. He had been calling me non-stop. The call count, 39 times. Finally, worn down, I answered. My ex-husband's voice was almost frantic. On the verge of tears. "Marcia, you have to help me. I can't find a job." "That's not my problem." "But it is. Your brother seems to have spoken to other company bigwigs about Susan and me, and now I'm turned away everywhere I go." His voice was trembling. His breathing ragged. "There's nothing I can say." I had no other words to offer. My brother must be really upset about this whole thing to go that far. "Don't talk about it like it's someone else's problem." "Because it is." I was perplexed and shook my head. "In fact, we're strangers now, aren't we? We're not a couple anymore." "That's not." I heard something crash over the phone. Right after, my husband let out a scream. It seemed like he had stumbled and hit the furniture. A woman's shrill scream could be heard as well. I assumed it was Susan. From my ex-husband's descriptions, I had imagined her as a kind and dedicated woman, but the voice I heard seemed sharp and short-tempered. Susan appeared to be panicking and getting frustrated with the situation not going her way. I could hear my ex-husband trying to calm Susan down. "Susan, it's okay. Marcia will sort it out for us. Don't make assumptions." I grimaced unintentionally. How self-centered can someone be? He resented my abilities and gossiped about me, but now in his time of need, he expected me to bail him out. "I'm not your wife anymore, and I have no obligation to help you." "Marcia, don't be like that, okay?" His voice was the sweet-talking kind. When I used to love him, I was weak for that voice. I often let his whims slide. But now, I stood firm and spoke clearly. "You said marrying me was a mistake, right?" He seemed to struggle to respond. His stammering was overlaid by Susan's yelling. "Do something about it. I thought you were rich because of this fancy house. You came after me for my money? Obviously. What else would there be?" Susan snapped back sharply. My ex-husband argued with Susan for a while, but then I heard a door close. Susan seemed to have left the room. My ex-husband spoke over the phone. his voice now completely tearful. I was wrong. It wasn't a mistake marrying you. The mistake was leaving you. Well, that's how it is. I feel relieved that we split up. And with that, I hung up the call. At work, the ghost calls from my ex-husband continued, but I didn't respond. He said Susan had left. He looked like a different person in just 1 month, haggard and unkempt. His clothes were dirty, and he seemed not to have changed them for days. Maybe he hadn't even bathed. And now I have to pay child support with no job. You should, it's your child after all. My ex-husband was standing with his arms crossed at Michael's house entrance. This is my son's house. You betrayed us once, and you still have the nerve to show up. I came to talk to my son. You're no help at all. No matter how feeble he looked, his spiteful nature was intact. And then my ex-husband called out over my shoulder to Michael. Hey, Michael, it's me, your dad. I need to talk to you. Hey, keep it down. I was shocked by his loud voice, not caring about being a neighborhood nuisance. Sure enough, neighbors peered out their windows, wondering what was going on. Dad, cut it out. Michael came to the door. I tried to stop him, but he was visibly upset. I've got something to say to Dad, too. This is perfect. Saying so, he faced his father. My clueless ex-husband's expression brightened. Michael. What is it, Dad? Michael stood protectively between me and my ex-husband. You're going to have a new sister or brother soon. Huh? Michael's reaction was totally reasonable. The idea of having a sibling as old as his own child was just bizarre. But my ex-husband, oblivious to this, went on. I need money for the baby to be born safely, but I'm out of work right now, see? Could you lend me some? I'll pay you back, of course. Get real. Michael dismissed him outright. My ex-husband recoiled a few steps. Michael continued in a stern voice and expression. Dad, please don't disappoint me any further. I don't want a brother or sister, and even if one is made, I won't acknowledge them. Isn't it just a child you made with your mistress? They have nothing to do with us, our family. Don't say things like that. I was wrong, I admit it. But the child isn't to blame, right? Just go home. I couldn't help but raise my voice. How much longer do I have to listen to his selfish claims? I can't let Michael be troubled by this. You have no relationship with us anymore. Please, just leave, Nick. I said it in a businesslike tone. There couldn't be a clearer rejection. My ex-husband groaned and held his head. This isn't how it was supposed to be. He continued to visit the house reluctantly. In the end, we consulted with the police about my ex-husband. The officers responded promptly, and my ex-husband was finally recognized as a stalker. He was now barred from approaching his former family in any capacity. It's a lie, right? I can't get in touch with Susan, and I don't know what to do next. With the source of the gossip gone, the whispers about me also began to fade. I plan to become someone about whom no bad word can be heard. By the way, Marcia. What? One day, I was called into the president's office. My brother, sitting in the chair, looked a bit troubled. I don't have a son to take over for me. I had thought of your husband for the role, but with him, that's not going to work. And we're divorced now, too. I shrugged my shoulders. My brother leaned forward slightly, looking me in the eye. How about it? Marcia, would you consider taking over after me? Me? I was flustered. Certainly, there was an age difference between my brother and me. I was in my 50s, but my brother was nearing 70. But I've promised not to interfere with company management. Yes, until today you've kept that promise well. I trust your integrity, and that's why I want to entrust the future to you. Please let me think about it, I asked. He said he wouldn't force me, which I appreciated. I left the president's office. Meanwhile, I continued looking for an apartment. But in the end, I decided to continue living with Michael and his wife. It was Michael's wife who offered this. I really appreciate having you at home. Really? I was surprised by her unexpected words. Michael's wife continued gently, as if explaining. By myself, I just can't keep up with the childcare and household chores, and your help has been a lifesaver. Exactly. Michael joined the conversation. I help out when I'm home, But I just can't match the years of experience you have, Mom. You know exactly what to do around the house. Michael, you too. I was overwhelmed with happiness. Living with my son and his wife was also a source of comfort for me. I could feel my heart, which had been trampled by my ex-husband, slowly healing. Are you both really okay with this? Of course. We look forward to continuing this, Mom. Michael and his wife both smiled welcomingly at me. While working, I shared household duties with Michael's wife. They never forget to express their gratitude for even the small things. Hey, meatloaf today? My favorite. Thanks for remembering, Mom. I learned some cooking tips from you, Marcia. Your time-saving techniques are really something. Thank you. It's nothing. I blushed with modesty as we ate dinner. Afterward, it was time to play with my granddaughter. This was my favorite time. My granddaughter, resembling her father, evoked a sense of nostalgia in me. While enjoying the unique scent of baby milk, I lifted her up. She laughed innocently. She laughs a lot. She's like Michael when he was little. Really? Yes. I squinted with nostalgia, and Michael's wife laughed. That's surprising. Michael frowned. Mom, please stop. It's embarrassing. What's wrong with that? We're family, after all. I said it with a heart full of contentment. What a warm thing to say out loud. Michael and his wife looked at each other happily. The baby seemed sleepy and began to close her eyes. I am happy now. And one more thing. By the way, I have something I want you two to hear. What is it? Next year, I'm going to take over from my brother. Life will probably get busier, but also more fulfilling. I smiled at the thought of the future.